Hi, everyone. Apologies about that. I couldn't log in for some reason, so
Oh,
sorry
no
about that.
worries. We're having some technical issues with some other people too. So particularly Steve, we have to get Steve up and loaded.
Okay.
And we are missing nobody, right? We've got everybody now. And there's Mario.
I just promoted him to a panelist.
Okay, great. And Steve had to go out again. Let's give Steve one more chance to try to pop on.
I just forwarded him my link, so hopefully that one works.
Okay, good. We're going to start the Common Council Ordinance Committee special meeting in 2 minutes. There's a little technical difficulty for some people joining who are needed. All right, Steve, we're going to test you. And once you're good, we're going to start the meeting. You're still muted as far as our, yep, you're still muted. No. Oh, you poor thing. I know you can't respond, but Brian sent you a new link. I don't know if that's the one you're using. Sorry for the delay, everybody.
Yeah, we'll give Steve a second to get back in.
In the meantime, Brian, you can look maybe through the participants and attendees and just I think we'll start with people we know as we talk about.
All right, Steve's back. Steve, can you unmute yourself?
This is truly a lawyer's greatest fear. He
I know.
talks and no one hears him.
No, it's the worst. The only other idea, Steve, might be to call in. He's going to try that. Okay.
Okay.
And we apologize to the public for waiting. We just have to get our subject matter expert on board. While he's doing that, we can take the roll call. We can get some pieces of business done. So we actually have everybody here. I see Johan Lopez, Jalen Seed, Melissa Murray, Josh Goldstein, Nora Nojeski-Eitner, and Heather Dunn are all in attendance tonight. So we have a full committee, which is great. We're going to see if this works for Steve, and if not, then we're going to have him call back in and we'll start public comment.
Lisa, should we do the minutes now?
I was actually gonna, yeah, why don't we move the minutes? We'll sort of, if everybody's okay, I have a motion that we change the order of our agenda and take the minutes at this time. Is everybody okay with us doing that? No issues at that? Okay, so why don't I, will somebody move to accept the minutes of January 16th, which was our regular meeting? Thank you, Josh. Are there any changes that we would need to make? I know we had one of our participants' name needs to be spelled correctly.
I will make that change to Donna's to Donna for Donna.
Yep, that'd be great. And
Also, Lisa Henderson as well.
was her name misspelled as well? What's
Yeah, it's number 6.
number 6? Yes, thank you for fixing that. And Josh, you had some other language you wanted to include.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I just wanted to add, obviously, we had quite the chaotic meeting a couple of weeks ago. And it notes that people were muted and removed, but it doesn't say why. And I just think it's worth noting, I think it's the last sentence. So at this point, the committee cut off public comment and announced that police were notified. I think some language along the lines of, as the, commenters, the commenters who were muted and removed, said made racist and anti-Semitic comments. Something like that. I was going to put it, Brian, at the very end.
Okay, not for each one.
Not for each one. So, at this point, the committee cut off public comment and announced that the police were notified, as the commenters who were muted and removed were muted and removed because they made racist and anti-Semitic comments.
Right.
That's it.
Okay, that sounds good. Alrighty, so with those changes, all in favor of accepting the minutes as amended? I can't see everybody. Melissa, you're in. Heather's in. Okay, great. So that seems to be unanimous. Great. All right, let's go back and see if Steve has joined us, and then we'll get the public comments started.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
We can hear you. That's fantastic.
No, I'm wondering, are you hearing me on my phone? Because now it says I'm not muted.
Yes, you're on. We can hear you. So
Both
that's
ways,
great.
or
I only hear you on the TV screen.
all right, I'm going to keep the phone on. I don't know how I'm being heard, but I'll keep it on.
All right, good.
Okay, good. I'm glad I'm here.
Yes,
Nice
we're
to
glad
be
you're
here.
here as well. All right, so before we begin the public comment section of our meeting, I'd like to make a few comments about what happened a couple of weeks ago. And I'd like to say that my experience as a Common Council member has been that we as city officials have always welcomed and encouraged robust open communications between the public and the council in both the public comment sections of our meetings as well as at public hearings. It's vitally important that we continue to hear from people who have different opinions across our community. Public discourse is vital to government work, and we want to hear from as many residents as possible regarding issues confronting our city. What we will not tolerate is hateful rhetoric or personal attacks. Hateful speech undermines the important work we do as a community together. We need to foster discourse that best reflects the broader Norwalk community. So I want to encourage all of us to bring our best selves to these public commentary venues. To remind everybody of the rules about making public comment, one must first state one's full name, one's full address, and then we're going to take a pause. And once Brian tells you that you might speak, then you may speak for 3 minutes on a matter that's listed on the agenda. Tonight, the only thing that we're speaking about is the reapportionment ordinance. So with that said, Brian, if you want to begin the public commentary, that would be great.
Sure. If any of the attendees would like to speak, please raise your hand. So far, we have 2. So again, I'm going to ask that once you're identified to speak, please state your full name and address, pause until I give you permission to speak, and then you may speak about something on the agenda. So the first up is Jason Christopher. Jason, you can lower your hand, unmute yourself. Please give your full name and address, and then pause.
Hey, folks, how you doing? Jason Christopher, 1 Naples Avenue.
Okay, Jason, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. As chairman of District C, as a Republican, I'm speaking tonight regarding the redistricting process. I've noticed significant changes concerning District A and District C. I have concerns about what appears to be a lack of inclusion in the proposed ordinance. While it aims to ensure equality, the new language leaves much to be desired. With Democrats holding 14 of the 15 Common Council seats and independent Heather Dunn as the sole minority party representation, true inclusion seems challenging. I would strongly advocate for the minority leader to have the right to consult with party heads and others to provide names that are fair and balanced, ensuring true inclusion in this process. The majority of the committee, heavily tied to their political affiliations, may not adequately represent diverse voices through no fault of their own. Despite hopes for a balanced representation for different parties, the proposed rewrite feels even less equitable given these ties. I would urge a strong reconsideration of this process. Thank you so much, folks, and I appreciate your attention to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Christopher.
Thank you.
Are there other hands raised, Brian? Oh, you're unmuted now, Brian.
Next up is Fred Wilms. Fred, you can lower your hand. You can unmute yourself, full name and address, and then pause.
Okay, hi, I'm Fred Wilms. I live at 6 Westview Lane, and I'm here speaking in my capacity as chair of the Norwalk Republican Town Committee.
Thank you, Fred. Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I looked at the revised ordinance language.
Oops. Sorry. Sorry about that, Fred. Fred, you can unmute yourself.
Okay.
Sorry
And please
about that.
cut your comments again. For some reason, we cut you off. So if you begin again, Mr. Wilms.
All
Thank
right,
you.
I'll just start from the beginning, if that's all right.
Yes, please. Sorry about that.
Okay, not a problem. So I had a chance to look at the revised ordinance, and the president still appoints all 7 members. I have to say that this process is really out of step with what we find elsewhere in Connecticut. First of all, starting with the state of Connecticut, when the state legislature redistricts, it's a bipartisan commission of equal members from both sides. Each side gets to pick its own members. And this bipartisan commission has worked well for several decades. And these folks not only create the districts for the state representatives, they do it for the state senators, they do it for the probate judges, and they even do it at the federal level for the U.S. Congress. If you look at our comparable cities in Connecticut, I see that Stamford, Bridgeport, Waterbury, Danbury, and Hamden also have bipartisan commissions, equal members from both sides, majority leaders pick. So this process here just seems really out of step with what we see elsewhere in Connecticut, and really scratching my head over that one. It's almost kind of seems like more what they do in Washington, D.C., where it's pretty much a winner take all kind of process. There's no bipartisanship, no collaboration, no inclusion, and unfortunately, that process, as we know, creates lots of friction and suspicion and acrimony, which is why we in Connecticut, with the cities and with the state, they've structured the way they have to prevent that from being the case. I've heard that elections matter, and I completely agree with that, having been in quite a few on both sides of the winning and losing. And it's true, the Democrats' majority party on the council, you have 14 out of 15 seats, and so that's a fact. It's also a fact that Republican candidate Vinnie Cicutano got 45% of the vote last year. You have the power. You absolutely do. You can vote however you wish. But my request is that you ask yourself how you use your power. And I think you have a choice right now. You can basically do what they do in Washington. You can just ram it down with what you have. And you got the votes. You can make it happen. Or I would ask you to maybe search for your better angels and use what we see here in Connecticut, where there's harmony, there's working together. We see it at the state level. We see it at multiple city levels. And so in conclusion, my recommendation is that you adopt what Stamford has, our sister city right next to us. 8 members, 4 selected by the majority leader, 4 selected by the minority leader. And finally, if for whatever reason this process doesn't work, I notice you have a step 2 process where the mayor gets to pick 3 people, and then essentially the mayor decides what the districts are. So you have a fallback mechanism here in case what I suggested really doesn't work, but I think it will, and I hope you give it due consideration, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilms. Are there other commentators?
Anybody else who wants to speak, please raise your hand. We have one more. Oh, no, they lowered their hand. Does anyone else want to speak? If so, please raise your hand now. Otherwise, we have to go on to reading the emails that were sent in. Okay.
Okay. So Brian, if you would read the 2 emails we got, that would be great.
Sure. The first one is from Lisa Britton, Norwalk Independent Party Town Chair, 19 Shorefront Park. To members of the Common Council Ordinance Committee, I would like my emailed public comments read into the record for the January 30th, 2024 special meeting of the Ordinance Committee. After speaking at the Ordinance Committee meeting earlier this month, I'm disappointed that the revised wording for the Reapportionment Advisory Committee remains effectively unchanged, with the council president still maintaining the authority and undue influence by the mayor and majority party to select minority party members. The process remains insider baseball and is inconsistent with best practices of neighboring Democrat-controlled cities, Bridgeport, Danbury, and Stamford. I referenced the specific clauses regarding their selection process. I believe each of you were provided this data in December. Stanford, the reapportionment commission shall be composed of 8 electors with 4 members from each party selected by the majority leader and the minority leader of the Board of Representatives. Bridgeport, if the city council fails to adopt a reapportionment plan by the date set forth in section 7B of this chapter, there shall be created a commission on redistricting composed of 6 members, 3 of whom shall be appointed by the leader of the majority party on the city council, and 3 of whom shall be appointed by the leader of the minority party on the city council. In the event that there is only one party on the city council, the minority party member shall be appointed by the registrar of voters whose party is not represented on the city council. Danbury, the reapportionment advisory commission shall consist of 5 members, all of whom shall be electors of the city. 2 members shall be appointed by the majority leader of the city council, and 2 members shall be appointed by the minority leader of the city council. In the event there are members of no more than 2 political parties on the city council, per the registrar of voters, the current composition of Norwalk's electors are as follows: Democrats, 22,120, Republicans, 9,213, unaffiliated, 23,590, other, 1,042. For the past decade, Norwalk has had a Democrat mayor and 14-1 Democrat-controlled council, despite 45% of the electorate voting differently. While appreciating our first past the post process for determining winner outcomes, it can't be ignored that 45% of Norwalk's electorate does not support single-party rule and remains frustrated by the lack of transparency, closed party caucuses, and lack of check and balance on our Democrat-controlled city. Should the current language move forward, it demonstrates to 45% Norwalk's electorate that this committee doesn't care about diversity, equity, or inclusion when it comes to minority opposition. It also makes Norwalk an outlier compared to our neighbors by being less democratic, fueling the national debate about a lack of faith and confidence in government. Genuine minority opposition versus handpicked insiders, regardless of the letter after their name, should be welcomed. It demonstrates your commitment to the democratic process and good faith to the 45% of the electorate who vote differently. Groupthink can be a dangerous thing. Thank you, Lisa Britton. And there's one other one. Bear with me. This one's from Donna Smeritopoulos. Dear members of the Ordinance Committee of the Common Council and Madam Chairman, my name is Donna Smeritopoulos and I live at 18 Shorefront Park. Please read my comments into the record. The revised language regarding appointments to the redistricting committee is depressingly similar to every other Norwalk committee appointment process. The composition of the committee requires individuals from the non-majority party. However, party of registration in Norwalk is not sufficient to create true diversity of opinion on this committee. Norwalk has invested considerable real and emotional capital in promoting the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. In fact, however, when it comes to the many appointed bodies in the city, diversity of opinion is not their strong suit and does not seem to be sought after quality. You have an opportunity this evening to correct course and create a process for populating the districting committee that respects the diversity of opinion in the city, diversity of opinion that is poorly reflected today on any committee or commission that goes through the mayoral appointment process. I ask that you amend the process to allow the minority leader to appoint minority party appointees and to consider that the single largest block of registered voters are unaffiliated. We cannot be a city of progressive ideas when we keep dipping at the same well of friendly and well-known faces to serve on committees. While it is the prerogative of the mayor to appoint and the council to anoint, the redistricting committee is exempt from that process. If the ordinance committee chooses to leave the ultimate decision-making in the hands of the council president, who is a full-time employee at City Hall, you might as well rubber stamp the committee with the choices the mayor feels comfortable with and get on with it. But at least if this is the course you take, have the moral courage to admit that you're not choosing to pursue a path that is likely to be perceived as fair, equitable, or inclusive. Respectfully yours, Donna Smeritopoulos. That is the extent of the public comment.
Okay, so
Via
let's,
the emails.
great. Thank you. Do you want to just test one more time for the participants and then we'll move forward with some little nits that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention that we found as we went through this a little closer over the weekend?
Sure. If
And-
anyone who remains that would like to speak, please raise your hand now, or we're going to close public comment. No hands are raised.
I think Lisa Henderson just texted me and said she
You
was
did?
trying to get in, but
Is she
couldn't
trying
raise
to?
her-
I've seen her raise her hand and drop it a couple times. I will promote her. If she would like to speak, she can
Okay.
let us know. Lisa, you can unmute yourself. Please give your full name and address, pause for a moment, and then you can proceed to speak on a matter on the agenda.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good, because Just give me 1 second. Let me pull up now. I was having trouble trying to get in. So
I apologize. I thought you were raising your hand and then changing your mind. I didn't realize you were having difficulty. Please go ahead.
I was trying to raise my hand and then no worries. So Lisa Henderson, 21 Apple Tree Lane, Norwalk. So we also own properties in District C, District A, and District B. So and where I live, District. We own, a number of properties. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak regarding the Reapportionment Advisory Committee. It is disappointing to me that after the last meeting, there is no effective change to this ordinance than what was presented on January 16th. The taxpayers of Norwalk spoke up asking for a more fair and equitable way to committee members. We were ignored. Is this really the message that you want to send to the taxpayers that you represent? Please reconsider this version of the ordinance and allow minority representation chosen by the minority political leaders, especially the lone independent minority leader, Heather Dunn. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Are there any other people who would like to speak? If so, please raise your hand now, or we're going to close public comment. No hands raised, Lisa. I think we can close it.
Okay, great. So let's do that. We're going to close public comment. And I just wanted to share with the committee a couple of little nits, like I said, that we came up with over the weekend as we were looking at this a little bit closer to make these changes. And Steve, I think that you've got some of these lined up, but we'll go through them really quick. So in 925C, there needs to be an S added to the fifth line where it says at-large members of the Common Council. It says member, but it should be members. And then in the sixth line, members is capitalized, but it should be lowercase. And then what we think also should happen for the last sentence, it should say the elected at-large members are not subject to the periodic reapportionment required by the general statutes. I think it should say comma and should be deleted. Section 33-4A of the charter, comma, or this chapter. Okay. Then in 27A, no, sorry, that's okay. That's what we want. 928A. Instead of saying including in the third line, we should say which shall include. Do you see that? Yeah, got that. Okay. And then in 928B, we say in the last three lines, such other third-party resources, comma, facilities and funding as the council may deem desirable. Council doesn't have the ability to fund, so we're just going to say such other third-party resources and facilities as council may deem desirable. Everybody got that? And then in 928C, we said
Hold on 1 second, Lisa.
okay, you got that?
Yeah, I have everything up to the last one. I'm trying to get to 928C. Just bear with me 1 second.
Very good. These are all just nits, just little nits that.
And Brian, before you go down, you need an and after resources in B.
Yeah, there you go. And get rid of that little comma. You got it.
Okay, Lisa, go ahead. You were in 928C, I think you said?
Yeah, so the second to last line, instead of as well as, we should say including a copy of the map. And then in 928E, we say the report and plan. We should just say report because we just asked for a report.
There's two report and plans, Lisa. Which one do you want removed?
I'm going to have it anytime you say and plan, take out and plan.
Because there's two of them.
Yeah, there's another one. Yes, in 28E, and then I think that there's also one in 929C1. It's in the heading. And then in 928F, I'm kind of making you bounce a little bit.
Well, where was the other report and
I think it's a 921C in the heading,
921?
929C.
929
C.
C. Hold on one second.
C1.
Oh, C1, there it is.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, there it is. Yep. Oh, where are we now?
So we're going to bounce back up to 928F. And instead of saying the last day of the 6th month, which is a little confusing, why don't we just say the 180th day? And that way it's really clear. Okay. And let me see if I have anything else. Oh, in 930C, we should say approved, not adopted. Approved, you got it. And then you'll see down in 931, we say plan again, and plan, so we'll get rid of the plan part in the, yeah, perfect. Steve, is there anything else, or did I miss any nits that we had spoken about?
I think that in B, deliberations, it's on the page. I'm just taking a look here. Do we have a redundant sentence? The report of the second reapportionment advisory committee shall establish the
Oh,
boundaries.
yes.
I think that's already established in the first sentence.
Yeah, we could get rid of that too.
I think that second sentence can be deleted.
There we go. Got
And
it.
then if you go up again, Brian, to C1, that same place where you took out the word plan, at the end of the sentence, C1, 9-29C1, right there, at the end of the sentence, general election, following reapportionment. It should become effective for the next municipal general election following reapportionment, because that will be true going forward.
Should we say general elections because it could be more than one?
Well, there are only
Well,
one
there's
at
only-
a time, so. Yeah.
But is this
How many
gonna,
general elections are there?
but is this gonna apply for the primary was my question.
Should we say general and primary elections?
You could say that, but if it's a general election, the selection process leads to the general election. So you could say the next general election primary leading up to the election, if you'd like. Candidate selection process,
How
whatever you
about
want to say.
election starting on blank date?
Well, it has
You
to
can
follow
do
the
that.
reapportionment.
Okay.
Yeah, it would only be following reapportionment.
Mhm.
Could it just say next municipal election and take out the general?
Yeah, how about that?
Over to make sure.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, let's do
Mhm.
that.
That solves it.
I was going to go there too. Okay, so
Very
I
good.
think that those are the nits. And so with those nits done, I was going to open up the conversation to our common council members in general to speak about this ordinance. I think that, well, Nora, we'll let you open. It looks like you've got your
Oh,
hand up.
sorry, I had one more nit.
Oh, okay, good.
I think, Brian, if you can scroll down where you change, now that we've changed it to 180 days instead of 6 months, I think that needs to be made consistent.
Mhm.
Hang on, sorry, I'm trying to see
Do we
where.
do we put 6 months elsewhere? Is that what you're saying?
I think you had 6 months in one of the prior, just above where you changed the 180 days. Hang on.
Let's just search for months. Yeah, 6 months. No
Yeah,
later than 180 days you want?
Yeah, let's use
Yeah.
that.
Let's just be consistent.
I agree.
Okay,
And,
that
I
was my
mean-
that was my nit. I'm happy to defer to you, Lisa, for the other comments.
Okay, so I was just going to open up conversation with the council in general to speak about this ordinance. I think that, everybody's had 10 days with it. Some people were able to reach out to Steve, other people reached out to me to talk about it. Steve, do you want to give some general comments about, how this is protective of minority rule and how this might compare to other jurisdictions? Maybe we should start there and then we can open it up to discussion.
Yeah. Every town, every town is a little different, obviously, and there are different models throughout the state. but I want to just point out the major changes that were made between the last meeting and this meeting. First, in 9-26B, we made it very clear that communities of interest, historical boundary lines, should be utilized. Efforts to make sure the boundary lines of taxing districts are taken into account as well. So we broadened the concept to make sure that some of the issues that are mandated by federal law, including community interests and historical boundary lines, are specifically recognized. With regard to the composition of the body, the approach that was taken here is that there will be no political majority on the advisory committee. The minority leader gets an appointment, the majority leader gets an appointment, the president fills the remainder of the seats, and the intent of this.
No, see, we're not going with that direction. Remember, we have the president picking the 7 slots in consultation with.
I was just pointing that out. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The president picks them in consultation with the other leaders, as well as consultation with civic, political, and community leaders throughout the city, in order to reflect the diversity of residents as well as geographic representation that is required by the charter. The charter makes it very clear that there's different forms of diversity that need to be recognized in appointments. I think that the chair and others thought it was important to make sure that was accurately reflected in the ordinance, even though it doesn't need to be reflected in the ordinance. So, number one, there will be no majority of either party here, and the president will have to be mindful of those appointments as she sees the appointments that are made by the majority and minority leaders, which will be presumably partisan appointments. We also made it clear that the registrars are ex officio non-voting members. And for the final, if we get to the point where there has to be a 3-member second reapportionment advisory committee, in that case, there will be no more than one person from various affiliations, whether it's a party or no party affiliation. So you can only have one Democrat, one Republican if you go with the major parties, and one person of another party or of no affiliation at all. So the intent there was not to have any majorities anywhere, and to try to minimize those partisan activities. Finally, I just want to point out for the record that the advisory committees, and here's the other difference between where Norwalk is and where the other communities are in the state. We do not have this provision in the charter. And the charter was really focused last year on reorganizing the document, and wanted to not get deeply involved in political battles. And we could see the creation of a charter commission is a very political matter. What I would recommend as we move forward is that we try to create some fail-safes in the process that would further protect the non-partisan elements that we've tried to create in these two committees, where you don't have party leaders dominating the selection process. You have the institutional leader of the legislative body. But what we would also do is have a fail-safe at the end of the process, so that if the legislative body is incapable of acting, the actions of the final commission could, in fact, take effect. And we would want to make some special efforts to make sure that final commission is viewed as a strictly nonpartisan entity. We cannot do that by ordinance. The charter rules and the charter requires that we establish an ordinance, which means that the council has to approve a plan. And there is no fail-safe other than a majority vote of the council selecting the final districts. So in both cases, the reapportionment committee is advisory only. They make their recommendations. They should try to do it in a nonpartisan, bipartisan, tripartisan way. But ultimately, it will be up to the council, as it is in most of those communities, regardless of the political composition. It's the legislative body that gets to make the judgments unless you get to a fail-safe situation. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Brian, maybe we can take down the ordinance right now so we can get a chance to see each other. And I just want to see if there's other committee members who wanted to make any thoughts or share thoughts and comments. We'll start with you, Nora.
Thank you very much, Chair. So just a couple of comments I wanted to make. I want to thank you and Mr. Mednick for the time spent on this. And I really want to thank the commenters. I think people, have been very thoughtful and have raised a lot of good points. And for me, I feel like we came out in two ways that were important to me here. So the first was the addition of the historical boundaries. Again, I think that I hope the legislative record will be very clear here that the intent is really to make sure that we honor the constitutional rights of everyone in our city, but do so in a way that hopefully makes as few changes as possible. Because we need to make sure that one person, one vote, but also at the same time, this is not intended to be some kind of disruptive power grab in any way, shape, or form. And I think the record is clear on that now, and I think the addition of that language helps. The second thing I want to speak to is a point was raised by a number of the commenters, including I think some of our email submissions, which is that we are a city that is not a bipartisan city. We are a city where we have an enormous portion of unaffiliated voters. We have, I guess at this point you'd say probably 4 main categories of voters, plus a handful of folks in other areas. And so that is part of why I was uncomfortable with the approach that is sort of a bipartisan lock-in that is, sort of the older version in a number of other cities. It didn't make sense in Norwalk to have a committee that was composed of members of 2 political parties, because that is not our composition here. And quite frankly, because we cannot predict what the composition might be going forward, it also didn't feel comfortable to lock in a sort of, based on the proportion of registered voters in each class in 2024, we're going to divvy up the seats this way. So I think that the nonpartisan approach taken here, where no party has a majority, there I think is a really key and crucial point of this that I think has been somewhat elided by some of the public comments. No party has a majority on this commission. And that I think really is intended to be representative of the diversity of political thought in the city and make sure that all voters feel like they have someone on that commission who is, from the sort of general outlook that they, because again, I want to be careful. You is not a party, but you also has an opportunity to be represented on this commission. So again, I want to be very clear about that. It is entirely possible that we will have members of the public who are unaffiliated serving on this commission, as we do on many of our boards and committees. So again, there's no requirement in here that anyone appointed be a member of a party. It's merely a requirement that no more than 3 from any party. So I think there's appeared to be some confusion and misapprehension of that. I really wanted to clarify that. And I really am appreciative of the work that we've done to try to find a nonpartisan way of addressing this issue. And I look forward to the continued conversations about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nora. Heather, you're next.
Hi, can you hear me? You can hear me. I want to go back to the changes that were made. I feel like are a step backward, primarily because there's not that sense of accountability. I understand that Mr. Mednick talks about intent. This is a legal document, its intent is very much not part of it. I don't see that in here. And the next thing is, I totally trust Darlene. I totally trust Nora and you guys for doing the right thing. My concern is, I know how difficult it is to put together an ordinance, and going forward as things change, I do not see accountability in here for the intent of having a diversity of thought. And my concern comes from the fact that there is a very real 45% of people I don't necessarily think feel that they're part of the process or part of what goes on in the city. And so for me, it's more about what optics or what we're showing people about our intent going forward. I'm an independent. I'm not a Republican. I'm interested in what they have to say. But I don't actually represent them in a lot of ways. So yes, I understand the bipartisan and the you thing, but I wouldn't be here on the council if it weren't for the U's. So I do understand that. I just would like to see the ordinance be stronger about more equitable choices, maybe having a stopgap, like, and I talked to Lisa, I talked to you about this. Maybe the minority party leader should have the ability to veto anybody that's, I don't know, a felon or really somebody offensive or, you know, racist. And I'm not looking at it in terms of this go round. I think I'm looking at it in terms of this document is something that's going to be a living document for the city that we may not get a second chance at once we're gone, you know, to make it equitable. That's all I want to say. I'm done.
Okay, great. Thanks, Heather. Next up is Melissa.
Hi, yes, Heather, thanks for your comments. I do agree with Nora on the language. I think it was important for us to look at this as a nonpartisan way. So in response to Heather, creating a mechanism for veto based on party sort of makes it more of a political process, in my opinion. I thought the language to really reflect, especially in the last line, 927A, reflecting the diversity of residents as well as I thought that really cemented that we were looking at community groups and not partisan. So again, I support the way we've gone about this. I appreciate
Melissa,
the way
where are you seeing that accountability rather than just a vague wish list? Where is the accountability for that? I don't see that.
Well, the accountability is one at the election, you know, who we elected, and then two, in the majority vote. I mean, if you choose not to vote as a council member, and like as to your own point, you said, well, if there's a convicted felon, if there's somebody with a background you just don't agree with, so if you're, you know, have concerns about that, that's not a partisan issue at all. And that is something that others on the council would agree with you regardless of party. So that's the point of, you know, having conversation with president and having the president look at community groups that are representative of the values of the city. But that's also very much embedded in voter rights laws. And I mean, some of the things that I researched this week, I took off of the websites of some of our commenters here and did my own research. And all of that research said that the best standard practices, and even their own documents that they shared, was to have nonpartisan commissions, to have commissions that are focused on looking at the diversity of the community and the groups that impact the community. And that really moved the needle for me. So vetoing by party ignores that. And I feel like we have to follow the standards of the best practices. I sent out a document from Common Cause, which is started by a Republican. And so these are the best standards of fairness, is to look at the community groups of Norwalk and keep our focus there. And I think that the writing in this does that to the best of our ability. I'm done.
Great, thanks, Jalen.
Yes, I just wanted to just highlight a couple of points. In this recent charter, we actually got rid of the mayor having the sole appointment of the police commission and the fire commission. Part of that thinking was to be more inclusive and get transparency and bring it to the council. In my opinion, if you have veto power from the minority party, minority leader, or the majority leader, I feel like that's giving the majority leader or the minority leader power that we like just took away from the mayor when it comes to a sense. So I feel like it kind of be going backwards for the city. I think that we actually went a step further because it puts a lot of work on the president to have a consultation with the minority leader and a majority leader, as well as community leaders from minority parties. So I think that it actually is a lot more inclusive because that accountability is right there. And I think that it puts the pressure on the minority leader, majority leader, and community leaders to really get through to the president to make sure that the people are represented. But to give veto power or give appointment power to solely two people based off a party, to me, is problematic. And I think the city of Norwalk Now there's one change in the charter. I mean, there's a lot more changes, but that was one change that I think was great to allow it to come back to the full council and get that vote. So that's just my thing. I think that we went in a good way. I think there was a lot of accountability that's in here. And I feel pretty comfortable how it's written.
Thank you, Jalen. Josh, you're up next.
I think there were some really great points made tonight. Sorry, I look like my screen froze for a second. And like where I was like blinking or some weird pose. The only thing I would add in terms of accountability, and I think Jalen kind of touched on this, but I just kind of want to pick up where he left off, is we are actually at the level of accountability, because ultimately this is a plan that has to be adopted and voted for by the Common Council. While it's in, and a lot of the, especially in 927, yes, a lot of the responsibility is that we place trust in our leaders to consult with community leaders and take into account the things enumerated in that section of the ordinance and make a responsible decision. And that's what we're always asking our leaders to do. It's why we hold ourselves to the higher standard that we do. And it's important that we do that. But ultimately, if this, if the committee proposes a plan that the council doesn't like, the council would then have to make a decision and decide whether that's something that, that should be adopted or needs to sort of set it back to the drawing board. As I see it, I think this is a totally reasonable plan, especially considering in the immediate circumstance that the reapportionment that's likely going to happen is going to be pretty small. It's not going to be a substantial reapportionment, as I understand the numbers and where they are. And Stuart and Steve can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. And I think that this is a nonpartisan process, because ultimately we have people of all different political stripes appointed to boards and commissions across the city, and that has always made us better. And we're not shirking away from that particular principle now or in the future. So I don't really see a problem with this, and I also don't think that an arbitrary veto power is something that we should entertain for the reasons elicited by Jalen and Melissa.
Great. And Melissa, you have something further to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, because Lisa, we went around about this as well, that our fail safe with going back to the mayor, I wasn't really sold on. I wanted it to go a second round back to council based on a system that I read about for Stratford. And after really thinking it through, comments by Fred Wilms actually is what convinced me that going back to the mayor was actually a pretty balanced fail safe in this scenario, because the council just doesn't want that. They don't want to lose control. And Fred Wilms had said in the last meeting, you have to remember that your political fortunes change. And I think that when you look at having having a Democratic city as democratic as ours is, it's a lot actually easier to sort of go after the mayor position and for there to be a split council with a Republican mayor. And that's happened a lot of times in Norwalk's history. So I don't think there's any world where the council really wants to lose control over this vote. And it just provides a really strong lever for us to find candidates and to consult with our president and to come to agreement and get that vote at the council level. So I just don't see the need for any more partisanship.
Great. Thank you. Heather, you're up next.
All right. I hear you and I respect everything that you're saying. Thanks, Jalen and Josh and stuff. Melissa, I did read this information. It's kind of interesting that you reference Stanford. I encourage you to look at what's going on with their party and within them. It's kind of interesting. I understand, that we're going to vote on it, and this is probably the way it is, and that's fine. I would just like to request that when we vote, that we have a roll call vote so that it's on the record how everybody individually has chosen to move forward. Okay, that's it.
Melissa, do you have something else you'd like to say?
Yeah, just a little bit. Heather, it was Stratford that I was referencing and not Stanford. So, but to that point, even in Stanford,
Look into Stanford, because they're like us, primarily Democratic, but things are going on that I am
actually,
worried about happening in Norwalk
no,
going forward.
they're not like us, actually. I believe they have 40 members, which is much bigger than we are. And there's 2 per district, where we have a hybrid system that is at large and is district level, which actually amplifies your voice quite a bit, Heather, because the electorate didn't have an at-large vote for you. So I think our system actually disproportionately, amplifies your voice, which is great. So they don't have comparing Stanford to our system is not comparing apples to apples.
I think that everybody has a voice on the board, and I don't feel like I don't have a voice on the board at all. But I am well aware that, anytime that I vote no, you guys, as a majority, are just going to do whatever. However, once we get to the point, or if we ever get to the point where it's, an entirely Democratic council, like some cities have become, that's where things become split within the council. And I don't want to see that happen within our city. I'd like to see, more unity. So that's all. I'm just worried about the future. So,
Nora, do you have a comment? Or Nora, why don't you go next, and then we'll bring it to Melissa.
Just very quickly, as to close, because I agree, I think we've covered the ground here, but I just do want to reiterate that the most important thing that I hope viewers will take away from this is that no one has the majority on this advisory committee. And I think that was a point that we really took very seriously, and is a goal really to be reflective of our community. So the intent is not to sort of take advantage of our Democratic majority. Our goal is actually to really be thoughtful about representing the full breadth of our community in this process.
Thank you for making that point. And one of the other points that when I had discussions with each of you as I was gathering up nits and comments on this ordinance over the last 10 days, the point really is that we didn't really want a political document at all. We weren't looking to put together a board that's Democrats and Republicans or independents, or use for that matter. I think our view was that we really wanted to have a nonpartisan board to do this work, and that we're hopeful that our language of putting in that we want to have a diverse representation of the city and geography gets that point across to the decision maker, which would be the president of the council. And we feel, I think the language, the president shall consult with civic, political, and community leaders in order to seek members reflecting the diversity of the residents as well as geographic representation, is really where everybody's settled, not on political parties making choices, but on civic, political, and community leaders within the community. So I think that's kind of where we are. Are there other final comments, or should we take the roll call vote as Heather has asked? Looks like there's no further comment. You know what? I don't have everybody's names down in alphabetical order, so I'm just going to go as
well,
like,
Lisa, you have to move. Someone has to move.
Oh, yes, someone has
if you
to
want to
move it.
send it to
Thank you.
public hearing, someone has to make the motion.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa, for making that, and Jalen for seconding it. And now we can do the roll call vote on to send it to public hearing. And this is not a vote on the ordinance. Remember, Heather, we're going to take that vote in common council. So do you want to do a roll call vote just to send it to public hearing? Okay, then we'll do that. So Nora,
Aye.
Aye. Melissa, you're the next person I see.
Aye.
Great. Johan?
Aye.
Jalen?
Aye.
Josh?
Yes.
Heather?
no.
Lisa? Yes. So we have a majority vote, 6-1 to send it to public hearing at our next meeting, which is February 20th.
Lisa, someone also has to move to approve the minutes. We went through them, we made corrections, but we never had a motion to approve the minutes.
Oh, I
So
thought
moved.
Okay, thank you. We're back to that.
Yeah.
All in favor of the minutes as amended. That's also, you're in, yes, Melissa. Okay, great. So
Yeah.
that's done too.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Unanimous on that. So now I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Josh. All in favor.
Thank you to our stenographer, Telesco reporting. Thank you to Stuart, and thank you to Steve and the ordinance committee and Attorney Coppola for also attending tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Everybody for
Be
showing
safe,
up.
everybody.
Thank you very much. Night.
Bye-bye.
All
Good
righty,
night.
thank you all. Good night.